on the struggle bus today. Just got to own it whenever you are.
It's true, and some like, today started off so strong, and now I just feel like a chicken with my head cut off. Then you remember, you're like, "Gosh, things could always be 1,000 times worse than they are."
I appreciate that because, like we were saying beforehand, I was like, I have literally all of the energy in the world, but zero concentration right now.
They make meds for that, very helpful ones.
Most of the time, I'm really functional. Today's not one of those days.
There's just not enough hours in the day. That's the problem, and I'm so done with February. It's already a shitty month, in my opinion. The weather sucks. It's the month my dad died. It's the month my good friend died. I just like am always like in a funk when February rolls around. And just to kind of preview today's topic, we're going to touch on. I had some resurface of the panic attacks last month. I will say before we sort of get into it is I feel so grateful that I don't worry about them coming back with the same frequency as I had them in 2020. But a good reminder that it can always resurface and come
Mhm.
back.
Talk about disrupting function for long periods of time.
Yeah. I mean, that's where the disorder comes in, right? We're going to lean on your expertise in this area. I know people are like, aren't you both psychologists? Very different types of psychologists. Mine is school-based, education-based, working with students with disabilities and how we can improve their outcomes. Whereas Sarah is more of what people think of when you think psychologist of counseling and, diagnosis, treatment, those types of things.
Yes. So I am a clinical and health psychologist, still licensed. Within my field that I worked in was it was always an integrated setting. So I had medical physicians right next to me the entire time. This whole talk is just basically going to be psychoeducation to hopefully explain what panic attacks are, if you are experiencing them, what you can do to have access to care, what the standards of care actually are. With panic attacks in particular, it was always helpful to have the physician there. So we could really see the validity of doing some of the exercises that we talk about because we could see them biometrically as well.
Um, for me, I'll just reiterate sort of like what I experience physically. I'm trying to use big words, already messing them up. Um, Physically for me, the way I know that I'm having a panic attack is my heart starts to race. Usually that's above 180 beats per minute. I start sweating profusely. I feel like I can't breathe. Obviously, I can because I'm surviving them. But in the moment, it feels like you can't take a deep breath, or at least that's what it feels like to me. Like I'm actually like can't get enough oxygen in my brain. It's real like things start swirling. I have a hard time focusing. Then you start to wonder, like, am I actually having some other type of medical emergency? Like those thoughts tend to go through my head once it starts. So, would you say, based off what I just told you, that those are pretty typical types of symptoms for panic attacks?
Yes, for panic attacks, that is a typical symptom. Nausea can also be
Mm-hmm.
a piece of the puzzle as well because you are getting your entire sympathetic nervous system engaged. Whether you know it or not, everything is kicking into gear. And so that then can cause later on disruption. So the panic attack itself only is going to last a few minutes, but it's the afterburn
Mm,
that continues to feel like it lasts for hours or days. So people will come in and be like, I've been having a panic attack for 24 hours. No, you probably only had like one or two, but it's the, like I'm using the word afterburn, that is still
yeah.
has your physiological system revved up to the point where it has had a difficult time to resettle. And again, that does include your digestive system. That includes, your respiratory, the exhaustion that can kind of feel off after the fact. And so it still feels like that you were almost like charged, but have nothing, no place to go. And so again, it is a very um, kind of paralyzing position to find yourself in. And so, yes. And diagnostically, whenever we talk about this, there's actually panic disorder and then there are panic attacks, and panic attacks are a specifier. So within our realm of work, we can add that specifier to any other type of diagnosis. So you can have major depressive disorder with panic attacks. You could have PTSD, with panic attacks, or you could just have panic disorder in and of itself. And
Okay.
so diagnostically, there are different things that we have to kind of look at as psychologists because that does determine what our treatment plan is going to be for that specific patient in mind. And so that's kind of a wraparound answer for yes, and
Yeah.
here's the other things that kind of go along with it.
Yes, and right. And nobody
Hmm.
has the same symptoms. I'm going to assume everybody kind of experiences things differently. But I love the distinction you made of like the actual panic attack is only lasting a few minutes, but the afterburn effects. And I think that's what I think back to, like when I would spend like an hour, like you're right. You do sort of like start to recover a little bit, but it's that like physically you're so exhausted from what your body just went through that, I might lay on the floor for 30 minutes after one just because I couldn't get myself back up and get myself together. And I'm talking about when they were happening like, several times a day. It felt like they were lasting forever, because you were
Yeah.
just like constantly exhausted from it. But in this case, you're right. It was just a few minutes. And then once I started some of that self talk of like, your nervous system is dysregulated, like really talking yourself through that instead of being afraid of it, get
Hmm.
curious about it. Think like, okay, your nervous system is dysregulated, like your alarm bells are going off. And then I could sort of like work through that of like, yeah, your alarm bells are going off because you're worried that your kid is like having a major,
Right.
emergency, medical emergency right now. So that's a very normal kind of response that your body is like
Mhm.
alarmed, right? Which leads me to my next question. Like, are they sometimes an appropriate response? Let's say you were in a car accident, right? And your car flipped. Do people then sometimes have panic attacks immediately following like some sort of tragic thing? Or is it
Not
always kind of like a delayed thing?
the beauty of our evolutionary brain is that whenever we are in a true, honest panic attacks, like panic situation, like what you're
Mm-hmm.
talking about, we're able to function. And if you even listen to first responders, people who have survived these different types of things, you're able to respond in those situations because your true brain, um, the one that is actually supposed to respond in those situations, is intact and in gear. So you're going to have the same exact symptoms that you are having when having a panic attack, so to speak. But because of the situational context in your mind is different because of, again, the situation, you're not going there. So
Yeah.
what we have to work on distinguishing whenever we talk about this is that um our mind and our brain, our body and our brain are combined. It's not one just floating around without the other. But in the case of a panic attack, what happens is basically our mind recognizes physiological changes within our body that may be normative. So, for example, it is 100% normative for you in your situation to be concerned about your child,
Right.
considering that everything was happening. And if you look at this situation just as it was a period of instability, which again already gets like if we think about ourselves as a pot on a oven or on a stove, you're already kind of at a low boil.
Right.
This starts to happen, and now we've kicked it up a notch. But then where our mind intervenes without us even knowing it is what starts the panic process. So your mind was already sitting there wondering what to do about your daughter being sick,
Yeah.
your husband's out of town, all of these things, which again is kind of like a ghost now cooking in the kitchen. We're turning up the fire, but it's your body that is responding first instead of your brain. So they have
Mm,
this weird kind of like trick that they play on each other. And so
mm.
that's where so many times when people are having a panic attack, they end up in an ER, an urgent care, or hospital, and it's because of that physiological process that then our mind jumps onto and associates it with fear and anxiety, which is 100% not necessary. And nor does that happen in a true crisis situation. Okay.
Yeah.
But your body can learn that. It can learn that and then happen again. So if you do have a crisis situation, your body experiences that, it learns it from that, then the next time, again, your body is learning 24/7 without your mind knowing it, and your mind is also playing tricks on your body without the two of them. It's like they're backstabbing besties. Okay, they're not working together all the time here. What we're trying to do is to get them yoked and integrated. But they're backstabbing besties, and they're not always working on the same team.
Yeah, and you know what, that makes a lot of sense because if you think about when we meditate, right? A lot of times if you do guided meditations, they'll say not to just like take a deep breath because we do tend to say that a lot. Like if you're nervous, stressed, take a deep breath. It's not just about taking that breath, but really like training your brain to focus on that breath so that you're paying attention to the inhale and the exhale. You're not just going through the motions, but you're kind of connecting your brain to that. So what you're saying is making a lot of sense to me, and that they're disconnected, right? When you're in a sense of panic. But if you can regulate and get the focus, get your brain to focus on your breath, then for me, that does tend to have a positive impact. Like, I won't say that, that it's going to fix everything. And we're not here for a treatment plan. We are here to give you some
Right.
tools and some tricks that have worked in our situations, or that we're familiar with. But it does, if you can get into some sort of meditation practice, to me, it is like experiencing those two panic attacks was just reaffirming that my meditation practice is so worth it. There are days I don't feel like doing it, but it really is a muscle that I have strengthened over the last several years that can be used now as a tool. You can't just like try to meditate when you're experiencing discomfort. Like it really needs to be a muscle that you have built over time.
Yes. And again, you might still have the experience, but it's not going to be, it might be a flame instead of a wildfire that is
Right.
like taking off. So, with
Right.
that too, and just from like a basic treatment perspective, if you find yourself experiencing these things, seeing a CBT, a cognitive behavioral retrained psychologist is what the actual like standard of care kind of is for this. With that being the case, the first thing that we focus on is psychoeducation. We want a person to understand their condition because understanding takes away, again, the fear and anxiety. So, we're going to talk about all of it. We're going to talk about what it is. We're going to talk about identifying different types of triggers, which can be um, the way I try to remember it is like the T's, so it can be, and these sound crazy, but you're gonna have to follow me on them. Transitions, so like times of unsteadiness, whenever your life is just a little bit, has a little bit more uncertainty, then that can be it. So transitions, and it can also be getting up in the morning, going to bed at night, um, getting in and out of your car. Anytime you're in a transitional state, again, from a more physiological, again, the health kind of side of things, your body is at a point of shifting homeostasis, and homeostasis job is always to maintain some level of consistency. And so when
Mhm.
going between these different states, you are actually throwing your body in a period of inconsistency. It'll resettle, but you have to give it time and awareness to do so. We don't often think about it, which is the beauty. And again, the
Yeah.
curse of this big brain that we have now is that now it starts to think. Um, and so transitions are one, temperature changes are another. And so a lot of times people will sit there and say, I notice that I have a panic attack every time I go into Walmart. Now, Walmart, I get it. Definitely from a situational standpoint, but also generally speaking, whenever you're going into it, you're maybe getting blasted by the freezer section or, by the produce at some of these places. And so, again, your body is now happening to regulate itself and walking into that environment, plus with all of this other kind of stimulus that takes place.
I would think also when you get really hot. For me, like
100%.
if I'm on a plane and there's no AC and I'm in this confined space and I've got layers on, I am ripping my clothes off because like you're saying, like that change in temperature, like it automatically I can feel it start to bubble, right? I don't know. I think of like getting super hot for me is like a I'm gonna
Yes.
lose it.
100%. But again, it's because your body is struggling to maintain its sense of balance. It's not because
Mm-hmm.
this is messed up at that point in time. But
Right.
again, these two are feuding besties, and so it's going to make you think that that's the case.
Right.
So, with that being said, the quickest and the best way to actually, stop a panic attack in its tracks, is with ice. And
Yes.
again, this sounds 100% silly, but there's so much proof of this in our environment. There's real research that kind of proves this on another standpoint. But it's because the experience of something cold, especially whenever put on your chest, automatically makes you take that slow, long, deep breath. So I'll have many patients that used to come in my office be like, I've tried that deep breathing stuff. It doesn't work, like all of this stuff. And I'm like, correct. And that's because we haven't got your body to settle down before we try to talk your mind into doing something. So even if, like, with a practice, I know that if I take these slow, long, deep breaths, I'm still going to struggle to get that slow, long, deep breath in because I haven't done anything about this first. So you have to go through the body to get through the mind, period. Your body is always going to be your gateway into freeing your mind. If you are not moving your body, if you're not doing things to assist your body in this process, you will be stuck in this hell. And that is probably one of the worst ones to be stuck in. So,
Yeah,
ice.
that's such a great tip, and I didn't think of it that night when I was going through that, but what I did do, I'm like, "Okay, I didn't put," and I've done that before. I've definitely went and put, like, an ice pack on my chest. It is very helpful if you feel just, like, some nervous energy coming on, but I did go lay on the bathroom floor both times, which is, like,
Mhm.
ice cold. You know, that
Mhm.
was just, like, instinctive. It's what I do whenever I start to sweat profusely, like, when I'm just not feeling well, that's like my go-to. And so maybe like, that like my body was like craving that like instant shock of like
It knows
cold.
it. Yeah. Your body knows what you need before your mind will allow you to see it. Again, they're not communicating. They like to be at feud, but look like they're not. And so
Mhm.
it is the best thing. Quick showers. I used to have some patients that would then start to take like a cold thermal into a store and they could hold on to it if they were having like a dinner with friends and notice the sensation coming over them, holding on to some ice water at the table. I mean, this doesn't have to be things that people know that you're doing, but can help you to
Yeah.
kind of get to that resettlement point. Those freezer packs that you break and that they turn cold. I had some patients that would experience them while driving and they would just do that
Yeah.
to just kind of assist them in that moment. And then from there, we're able to talk through the process. We're able to identify what's going on in order to, again, break down that scary monster that's hiding underneath the bed. And
Yeah.
then once you're able to do that, then again, it builds that kind of base for things. Another treatment that has gained a lot of, um, again, evidence to support use within care and really helps a whole lot is that we want to induce those physical sensations so that way it helps you to untangle or dismantle what your mind is telling you. Because a lot of times, whenever we feel something physical, our mind then tells us that we can't handle it.
Yeah.
And that's not true. Like, when you're doing jumping jacks or running, your heart is elevated. It's supposed to be. You can handle it. So we're
Right.
going to elevate your heart rate in order to feel that way. If your main symptom of a panic attack coming around is dizziness, guess what? We're going to spin you around in a chair for a little bit to show you that you can actually withstand this physical
This feeling.
feeling. Yeah. So that way, whenever you're put in that position, again, you've got some training, so to speak, in
Yeah.
order to kind of manage through it.
And we've talked about this before as far as like kind of grounding techniques, those types of things, but listening, like how many sounds can you name? How many different green things can you see? Just sort of like trying to trick your brain. But what I hear you saying is if you try to do these things while your body is still responding, you're not going to be able to shift your brain quite so easily. So, would you like put an ice pack on your chest and then try one of these nervous system regulation techniques?
100%. Yes. And again, it's not that, and I had patients that would tell me this all the time. I've tried doing X, Y, and Z and it didn't work. It's not that those things don't work. It's the order that you do them in that matters. So, you can't bake a cake before you have all your ingredients in the bowl. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So we need to start with the basics first, and that is resetting the body. So that means ice. That means if you're having a panic attack, great, we're going to have you do some jumping jacks. Like, we're going to go ahead and rev this beast up so that way we can see how quick that you can actually handle it and calm down. And so then what we want to do is after we kind of get the body not to a point where it's all the way down to like zero, but to where it's not in that hyper responsive state, then we're going to layer those other skills and tools on, to help us out in those situations. And some of that is even distress tolerance skill building. And that is something I am the out of all the skills that I've probably ever learned, I have the most appreciation for distress tolerance because it is so globally applicable. Whether it is anger, anxiolytic responses, depression, it doesn't matter almost what the response is. And basically is that you are this doesn't mean you like it, but that you are willing to experience some level of discomfort, knowing that you can overcome it. Yeah. Or that this too shall pass in a way. And those are, again, things we don't like to think about whenever we're in that, but it's doing distress tolerance work before you're in the fire is what matters. And so that could be as simple as going out in the cold without a jacket. You're going to experience what it's like to feel cold before, you know what I mean?
Mhm.
I have an issue with it later. Or heat, you're going to learn how to tolerate heat. You're going to learn how to tolerate whatever the situation is, and you're going to be, coaching yourself, "I'm willing to experience this because it will eventually go away."
Yeah. Such a great point though, because the more you or the more that I've experienced panic attacks, the more you do start to kind of tell yourself like this too shall pass. You've lived through this before. Yes, it's uncomfortable, but that like getting comfortable being uncomfortable, part of that is you have to know what your triggers are.
Mhm.
And that I think sometimes can be hard to figure out. I think of it like whenever we do functional behavior assessments and for kids, we're trying to figure out why a behavior is occurring. We look at what we call the antecedents. So like what's the precursor to the behavior that sort of like trigger the behavior. Same thing kind of that you're talking about. What are those triggers? And sometimes that's the hardest part is identifying the specific triggers. Do you have any tips for how you can go about that? Is that like keeping a log and reflecting after
Mhm.
you've
Mhm.
passed through the anxiety attack? You go back and reflect and say, okay, what happened right before this? Is that kind of
Yeah.
similar or what you would
Yeah.
suggest?
It's the same exact thing. We're just the behavior's anxiety for us.
Mm-hmm.
The behavior is a panic attack for us. And so we do want to go back and try to figure out even, and this is where we don't negate the small things. Like we really want to acknowledge anything that could have served as a trigger um, within a period of time. And that doesn't have to be the most, everything was perfect today. Nothing was going on. Well, honey, that again, you're a pot on a stove. You know, what I mean? You may have gotten used to boiling. And so it's just really working with somebody who's able to kind of go back through objectively and not just go through your day, but go through your week, other experiences that might have been overshadowed. Like, I mean, the month of February, like you said, I mean, we could go back through that whole thing, but now just the idea that the month of February, our heat's going to be turned up a little bit more
Right.
again, as a point of awareness. And so anything that we can do to identify a trigger takes away its power. And now that doesn't, I'm well aware that I don't, that the boogeyman isn't there, but there's still a fear that gets associated with the thought. And so again, we're working on targeting that through this process too, through using other words to describe feelings or sensations, to recognizing that some physical sensations that we have that are associated with a behavior are normative for us in that situation. So, for you, for example, when speaking in front of public, it is 100% normative for you to feel that way. And
Right.
so, if you didn't, it would almost be weird. And so that's the acknowledgement, hey, this is how I'm supposed to feel
This
because
is,
I'm doing something I'm not comfortable with. So this
yeah.
is fine. This is actually
Right.
not something I should be concerned about. This is totally my normal.
Right.
Again, once we feel comfortable with that, then it's like, "Oh, okay, then everything's fine. If I don't feel this way, then what's happened?"
Right. And what are some, and then I go through, okay, what am I going to do? First thing I always say when I get up, I still get really nervous talking in front of a big group of people. I just let the cat out of the bag right off the get rip because you know what? People look at me and smile. And right there, there's that instant human connection of like, yes, I might be presenting today, but we are all the same on the base level,
Mhm.
right? We all get nervous when we have to talk in front of people. I'm going to trip over words. It is what it is. And so kind of working through that can help you, if you're just experiencing some like elevated anxiety. And like you said, using that word, you got to use it, um, judiciously. However, another trigger, and we can kind of talk about this, one that I found way back when I was experiencing this and kind of going through a treatment plan was lack of sleep. If I was
Mhm.
not getting good quality sleep every night, and that's where like that hamster wheel started, or the Ferris wheel of hell. You would have, panic attack and then not sleep well, and that it just like it became like this cyclical thing. And so is that a common trigger for panic attacks as well?
Yeah, everything goes back whenever we're wondering something, it always goes back to the body. Our mind is just gonna tell us that it doesn't matter or that it's not that big of a deal. So, being hungry can be a sign of a you know what I mean? Could be a
Could be a
trigger.
trigger for people.
Overeating. Yeah, overeating could be. Having something that your body doesn't agree with, being on a disruptive sleep schedule, not getting enough sleep because we're not taking care of ourselves from a physical standpoint, or an illness can come into play and then serve as, again, a trigger for this. But anything that happens to be a disruptor to the body or is a sign that we're not necessarily taking care of it is going to throw it off. And again, our mind is going to misinterpret that as being danger instead of an alert for self care. So our alert system is kind of what's messed up. Our
Yeah.
alert says something's wrong instead of this is something I can fix. And that's what we really have to pay attention to.
Yeah. I kind of going back to like normal things that kind of raise our stress. A lot of people are afraid of flying. And this is something that I'm going through with one of my children. We tend to fly quite a bit, and before flights, like it's escalated to throwing up and just like really getting worked up about it. And the trigger, right? You're about to step on a plane where you have no control, and all the same things. We all have these thoughts, or I think vast majority of people, when you step on a plane, you realize how little control you have, and how terrifying that would be should something ever go wrong. And I have a friend who wrote a book, and she talks about this in her book. She was been on the podcast, as a matter of fact. But she writes in her book about the way that she handled that was that she just like started booking flights, like taking flights everywhere, so that she could kind of prove to herself that you're safe, and that it's okay. Is that, a good way to go about it? Or do you have any tips for helping your child work through? Because what I notice is once their anxiety starts to elevate, guess what? So does mine. Because right, I'm
Mhm,
very intuitive
mhm,
and connected and to my kids, and so
mhm,
it is I wouldn't say that I have a ton of flight anxiety, but of recent, I have more. So, any
mhm. Yeah.
suggestions that you have? I can't really carry an ice pack around the the airport with me. So, anything else that you can suggest that might help in this case?
So, I mean, you could always stop and get some, like, I don't know, a cold drink or whatever else. With that, it's the feeling that it's not even the action we've associated with the plane or flying, kind of like how we talked about. It is the feeling that is overwhelming that is not able to be processed. And so, again, we have to put you in that feeling state and show you that you can process it. And so it's like we want to induce those same physiological symptoms that you're having associated with a plane, but it's not flying. Like, you've been sick at your stomach before and had a stomach bug and you've lived. This
Yeah.
is the same thing. And
Okay.
what I think you're talking about, like with Kate, exposure therapy is one of the most validated things. A lot of people don't like it because
Yeah.
you're actually exposing yourself to the trigger, but we have to do that in order to show ourselves sometimes that we're okay. Now, the way in which we go about it, we're not maybe necessarily gonna book you on 1,000 flights, but when I was a resident, we, had a virtual reality flight simulator that we would do with patients, and so we would put them in this reclining chair, put the VR system on them, and, go through that whole, like, flight. We'd have a nice flight, we'd have a flight that was in a storm, that was had turbulence, like, all the things
Yeah.
in order to kind of get somebody through it. Um, but the same thing, it's the physical sensations that get labeled with an emotion that then get labeled onto an object or an activity. And so we have to show them that they can survive the physical to allow the other chains as part of that link to get broken. And when she was exposing herself to
Mhm.
flying, it wasn't the flying that she was the target. It was the physical sensation that accompanied that, that was the actual target that she was benefiting from, because your body is going to get exhausted from getting worked up over something.
Yeah.
It does.
Yeah.
That's survival. That's where our, like, lizard brain kinda comes into play. It's not gonna continue to be scared of something forever. It won't allow it,
Okay.
period. It's your
Great,
mind that you
great
really get on there
advice.
with.
I like the way that you break that down and that it's the feeling that we then associate with something specific. You know, in the moment, it's really hard, even if you're trained in this stuff. I don't know if you feel this way, but like it's really hard in the moment to pull this out, this knowledge out and be like, okay, remember, this is just, you're just throwing spaghetti at the wall trying to make it stop. Um, and I struggle with that sometimes. I'm just like, I'm trying to like be comforting as a parent and like, look, we've have 7 flights with no turbulence. Like the majority of flights are not going to be that one experience that you had this summer. So I like that, and
That's funny.
I do think I can use that to explain that it really is the physical discomfort that they're afraid of,
Mhm.
not the actual thing that they've assigned it to, whatever that thing is. Roller coasters. I
Right.
mean, name the thing, right? Whatever it
Mhm.
is.
Mhm. Yeah. And I mean, just even this is in a different realm, but the same thing, whenever I would work with patients who were addicted, the number one thing was is that they didn't want to get sick, because whenever they were
Hmm.
detoxing off of like opioids, so to speak, then you get really, really sick at your stomach. But guess what? It's not going to kill you. We would be talking about it and be like, you've had a stomach virus before. Like even as terms
Right.
of a relapse prevention plan for them, it was like, you just got over the norovirus. They are gonna feel like they're dying, and they are not. So we
Right.
need to what's actually slowly killing them, so is the addiction, not the feeling of being sick at your stomach. Let's move past this. Yeah.
Right. Interesting, though. When you think about it from
Mhm.
that perspective, like, whether it's like weaning yourself off of a substance or anything, just in general, we don't like to feel discomfort. Hell, I don't like to go to the OBGYN. That shit hurts when they do a pap smear. Like, that is discomfort.
It is
But
discomfort.
it's like anything, you do it enough, you sort of learn how to breathe through it, get through it. Like you go to a different place and space in your brain. I think women are probably better at that. I'm just guessing because it seems like we have a lot of training and discomfort. And so, yeah, I mean, it really is about just kind of training yourself and your brain to deal with it, and just to realize like this too shall pass. We say there's a reason all of these sayings became sayings, right?
Right, right. But it's the feuding besties. As long as we remember these things are, you know what I mean, kind of constantly feuding,
Working
and
against
that
each other.
right. It's not so much that the tools don't work, it's the sequence that we use them in is what's most helpful. And
Boom.
so,
I
keep
love
that
that.
kind of stuff in mind. Yeah, and then again, seek help, seek
Yeah.
help.
And if it's something that, you know, if it's a one off, it's happened, maybe you can work through it with some of the things we've talked about. But if this is something that you're truly suffering from, don't wait. If you are experiencing recurrent panic attacks, it is probably best to seek some sort of help, um, because you can get to a point. I mean, I've said this before. I looked at my husband and I was like, I would sooner die than live like this. This is no way to live. It's truly not. It is painful on another level. And so if you are experiencing it, please reach out, um, and get help because
Mhm.
you can get through this. You can get to the other side, and there
Right.
is help out there for everybody.
Right. And I mean, just as an ongoing point with that, people are like, "Well, where do I go to get help?" You can go to your primary care doctor
Mhm.
as your first step.
That's what I
I
did.
made sure
Yeah.
that yeah, they will be the first. Oftentimes they're the quickest to get into, and they can serve as your
Yes.
entry point if you are unable to get into a more traditionally based mental health provider, um, in amount of time that is satisfactory.
I could talk to you about this all day. You're always helpful. You have so much knowledge when it
I
comes
appreciate
to
it.
anxiety and depression. And I've talked to you about many things, but I feel like that
Here
is
we are.
really your niche, and
Mhm.
you know,
I
I
love
I
that.
love these kinds of topics. So thank you for sharing your wisdom with us today. We are not your doctors, so please, if you're experiencing
Mm-mm.
any kind of disturbances, medical, mental, please reach out for help. This is just meant to
Mhm.
be informative and validating, and a reminder that there is help and that we can all recover from any type of mental health disorders. I truly believe with the right treatment that we can overcome these mental health issues. So
Amen.
check us out on our social media, y'all. I'm still not on the
Mhm.
socials. It's still Lent. So 2 weeks strong, no social media. Feeling good, guys.
Killing it.
Feeling good. Killing it. We're
Mm.
so appreciative. Share with your friends, like, subscribe, do all the things. Check us out at the Lilas Podcast or on our website, lilaspodcast.com. What else, Sarah? What am I missing?
I think you hit it all. Yeah.
Yeah,
Nailed it all in the head.
nailed it. All right. Well, as we said before, so many hours in the day. So we're going to get back to the grind. Until next week, y'all. Lilas.
Love, yes.